We are live with the Tundra Process Solutions podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Beacock.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Erik Allan. And today on the show, we've got a very special guest, our Logistics and Facilities Coordinator, who spent 8 years at Tundra and is a true pillar of the culture and facilitator of some incredible experiences over the years, Mr. Erik Allan. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
A legend, some might say.
Absolutely.
You might want to mention that I am retired.
That is what we're getting into.
There we go.
On this episode, we're going to be learning all about Chris's experiences and understanding what it's like to go into that next chapter, into retirement.
Exactly. So we wanted to start out, Chris. Can you remember your very first day at Tundra? And what was that like, if you can?
I absolutely remember it like it was yesterday because it was a very interesting day. I was interviewed at a coffee shop on a Tuesday evening at about 7 o'clock at night in a Starbucks. And on the next day, the Wednesday, I was invited into the office. And I brought in with me a couple of little tests that they had given me to do online. And I had an interview again and met some of the people. And then I started the next day, the Thursday. So it happened pretty quickly for me. And when they decided to hire me, they brought me into Iggy's office, and Iggy welcomed me and said to me that on Friday afternoon, be sure to stop by in his office for a beer at 4 o'clock. And I thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. Go to the boss's office for a beer at 4 o'clock. So anyway, I get up the next day and I show up for work. And it was in our old offices down on Flint Road there. Mm-hmm. And so I show up, and Mike Onstead, my boss at the time, I started in the boiler division, took me around and introduced me to a bunch of people. And then I was going to be onboarded. But Mike said, no, you're not being onboarded. You're coming with me. And I went in the car with him, and we drove to kind of a job site where he had sold a burner, and he was setting it up and tuning it up and getting it ready to fire. And I was there to help him out. And I missed my onboarding completely. And then he took me downtown to where SSI was displaying one of their lifts right on the street on 7th Avenue in front of one of the hotels there. There was some kind of a conference going on or whatever. And I stood around and met some of those guys and watched this unit running and that kind of thing. And then we went to a sort of a reception in the hotel where we had a bite to eat, and I met some of the customers and stuff like that. And then Mike drove me back to the office, and we walk in the door, and he hands me a book, and this book was this thick.
Okay.
And it was called The Boiler Book by Cleaver Brooks, and it was everything you could ever want to know about a boiler, about boilers, period. And he handed it to me, and he says, "Go home and read this."
Oh boy.
Really?
And did you?
And so I waited till he left, and then I went in and did my onboarding.
Right.
And got all that looked after. I never did read the book.
No. So Chris, in your role, I mean, you've always been such a cheerful guy, and every time you're around the office, what I've always appreciated you is that you're the kind of guy that just gets stuff done. You're making sure the facilities are immaculate. You're helping out wherever you can. What people probably don't know, and I bet you this wasn't in your job description, but every Wednesday, the company would get together for a Tundra Talk. And a Tundra Talk is like a TED Talk where we get experts from outside our normal echo chamber to come talk about something that they are experts in. And every Wednesday, this is a learning opportunity for all the staff at Tundra. And Chris cooks the entire company a home-cooked meal. So I got to admit, I look forward to every Wednesday. when it's Tundra Talk, because I know I'm going to get a delicious meal every week. What made you start that initiative?
Well, back in the old building, shortly after I started, I walked out into the warehouse, and Wayne Diesel was the warehouse manager at the time. And it was right around lunchtime on a Friday, and I smelled barbecue. And at the time, we had a deck out the back with a barbecue on it. And there's Wayne out there cooking up some burgers. And so I go out there and I say, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm making lunch. And I said, for who? And he said, whoever wants it. And I said, well, what are you making? And he says, I just went over to Co-op and got a dozen burgers and a box of, some buns, and I'm cooking them up, and whoever shows up can have one. And he had some pop there and everything. And I thought, hey, this is a great deal, right? And so the next few days I thought about it, and I thought, well, I wonder if it'd be okay if I did something like that. So I went to the operations manager at the time, and I said to him, I'd like to do maybe a couple of lunches on a Friday afternoon. Would that be okay? And he said, sure. And he said, that'd be really good for morale, and it'd be good for the culture at Tundra. And so I said to him, well, would you mind if I expensed it? Oh, he said, absolutely. I mean, you don't have to pay for it. And so that next week, I made beef dip. And all the trimmings and all that kind of stuff, and dessert and the whole bit. And we all sat outside on the back deck and ate, and it was really a lot of fun. And everybody got together, and the camaraderie and everything was super. That little deck we had was just big enough for our whole staff, and maybe at the time there'd be 20 people, 25 people at the most. And that just started it all. And I just continued to do every Friday afternoon. I continued to do the lunches. And then when we moved into the new building, there wasn't really much of a facility there for doing anything. The lunchrooms and stuff didn't have any cooking facilities or anything other than a microwave. And the place to put the barbecue was kind of awkward and didn't really work out so well. So one Friday, I didn't make lunch. And I didn't say anything to anybody. And then, but people came up to me all the time, where's lunch? How come you're not doing lunch? I said, I just don't feel like it. And then the next week, I didn't do it again. And Peter McAleer and Dan Pete corralled me in the lunchroom when I was getting some coffee. And they said, I don't think you understand, Chris. We want you to do this. I said, you mean it's part of my job now? And they said, yes, it is. So that's how it all got started, and I've been doing that. I did it for forever. So.
Which has led to the construction of full-scale industrial-sized cooking facility in our warehouse now. Interesting.
Right. Don't tell that to the landlord.
Oh, right. Maybe should we be broadcasting it to our 10,000 fans either? So cooking on the Wednesdays wasn't the only thing you did, Chris, too. There was, so we have a lounge night every Friday night up in our lounge at the Calgary Tundra facility, where we all get together and just blow off a bit of steam at the end of the week. You cooked hot snacks every week for that as well. You looked after everybody at the building. You looked after the building itself. Something Erik and I were talking about yesterday or last night was being in the service to others and how that contributes to personal happiness. And a lot of people say that's a big factor in being the happiest that you can be. Do you find that? Have you always been somebody that's been in service of others? And do you find that it makes you happier?
Yeah, I would say so. It's enjoyable to help others and to be, nice to people and helpful, share your experiences, share your knowledge, and, just have a smile on your face. I mean, positive attitude is the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a positive attitude. I once worked for a fellow that was belonged to the Optimist Club. And some of the plaques that he had on his wall from the Optimist Club were very enlightening, and I've always tried to be like he was.
Right.
Very cool. And I feel like no matter what's going on, highs and lows, you've kept that sense of optimism, and it's part of your aura, which I love. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on what's going on right now. I mean, with all the chaos out there, how are you staying centered?
Well, for me, not a lot has changed, because I retired just at the time when COVID pulled up. So I haven't experienced not being at work because of COVID. I've experienced not being at work because I retired.
Right.
So the timing for that was just, but what I really do miss is being with people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a people person. I love being around people. I love being able to inject myself into conversations and make people giggle a bit, and just try to lighten things up and make people have a good time when they're around me. And I miss that.
So what have you been doing after your last day at Tundra?
Well, at first, I did quite a bit of work around the house because, as you fellows know, my wife passed away about a year ago. And for 2 years prior to that, she had cancer, and we spent a lot of time just dealing with that.
Mm.
And so a lot of stuff got put on the back burner and left behind because I didn't feel like doing it.
Right.
And finally, when I did not work anymore, I had the time, and I had a little more interest in catching up on stuff that I hadn't been doing. So I did a lot of work around the house and just getting things the way I like them, because I'm a very neat and organized kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of purging. I got rid of a lot of stuff that has been in my basements for 24 years since I moved in. Mm-hmm. And I also completed one of the tasks that I've been working on for a number of years, and that is I completely refinished a dining room set that was left to me by my great-grandparents.
Wow.
Wow.
It was all wood, and it was made in about 1905, somewhere around there. And it's been in my family ever since, and it's been in my basement now for about 15 years. And I had done partially some work on it, but this gave me the opportunity to really get at it and get it all done. And it's sitting in my dining room right now, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I hope it's going to last my family another 115 years.
Fantastic. Right? It's amazing when you can really take the time to shut the rest of the world off and focus on one thing. They actually say that the definition of Zen is doing one thing at a time, and doing it with all of your presence, all of your awareness, and focusing, channeling all of that into one specific thing. And I feel like what a great opportunity for all of us, now that we have some extra time on our hands, to channel, try something new, go do the things that you've wanted to do for so long. Take the crisis, turn it into an opportunity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm continuing to do other projects that have been on my back burner for quite a while. For most of my career, I worked in the food equipment business. I sold food equipment to restaurants and hotels and nursing homes and hospitals and any commercial operation that sells food. So I got to know a lot of people in the industry, and I got to know a lot of chefs, and I got to know how to do things chefy style and all that
That's
sort of thing.
Secret.
Yeah, and one of the companies I worked for, which I really enjoyed, I was the sales manager for a company called Butchers and Packers Supplies. They have been in business since 1919.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had quite a history, and a lot of stuff that they had in there had been there. A lot of equipment had been there for years, because before I came along, it was kind of stagnant and it hadn't really grown much. And so when I came along, I cleared out a lot of that older stuff and modernized what we sold and that sort of thing. And I had purchased a meat slicer from a customer for myself because I wanted to have a slicer. My kids were young at home. I wanted to be able to buy a slab of bacon and slice it all up and
Nice.
and save some money and all that kind of thing. And so I bought this old slicer, and it worked great. It was nice little unit, and it was probably from the 40s, maybe.
Wow.
Somewhere around there. But anyway, one day a fella came in and he says, I have this old meat slicer on the back of my truck and I want to get rid of it, and I just want a smaller slicer. And so I said, well, I'll come out and take a look. So I went out in the parking lot, and there stood this slicer that's just about 4.5 feet high on a big pedestal, big cast iron pedestal shaped like that, like a cone. And it was a hand crank meat slicer that used to be used way back in the 1920s. And you would literally turn the crank on the front of the machine, and it would move the carriage back and forth, and it would turn the blade. So you'd set your meat on the meat thing and start cranking, and the meat would come out sliced. And it was, it was all there. It was complete. And there was nothing wrong with it. The only thing is, it was too big. It was just too much for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I traded him my little slicer that I had bought and took this home. And it's always been my project to take it apart, refinish it, put it all back together like new. And it would be a centerpiece for, say, an upscale meat market or deli.
Sure.
Or it could be like in the front entrance of a restaurant in some sort of a glass container or something.
Sure.
Or it could even be a movie prop. There's
Right.
all sorts of things that could happen with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so years ago, I had started working on it, and I had taken all the metal parts off and cleaned them up and primered them so nothing would rust. And then I had it all put away. And so I've started reworking on that, and I've repainted all the parts I can repaint, and I've started reassembly of it. And I should have that completed maybe in another month or so.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to getting that all done.
Cool.
And so, to me, it's fun. Like, it's just fun doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out how everything works, and what were they thinking when they did this, sort of thing. So I'm really enjoying that.
Well,
Cool.
speaking of fun, I know you facilitated a lot of fun at Tundra. Over the years, what stood out to you as some of the more memorable experiences?
Well, when we first moved into the building, on lounge nights, we would have little competitions and stuff. One time we had to build bridges out of paper and put the bridges between two tabletops, and then pile candies on top of the bridges until the bridge fell down. It was just so much fun. Everybody got into it,
Yeah.
It was great. And we had one in the old building where we had the balcony and the deck and then a railing. And what we had to do was take an egg and somehow package it so that if we dropped it off the balcony, it wouldn't break.
That's an engineering.
That was a great time too, because they all broke.
Of course.
So those sorts of things are in my memory as some of the more fun things that were just we created them ourselves kind of thing, and just did it to be playful.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably my best memory is when we created the second coming of Tundra Juice.
Oh,
I remember that.
Tundra Juice is it's a blue liquid. And years ago, before I started, Tundra Juice had been created by some of the sales guys sitting around making up things, and they decided it had to be blue because that's Tundra's color. And so they came up with some sort of an elixir that was blue and had booze in it, but it was way too hard to make. There was like 12 or 15 ingredients in it, and the blue that was in it was Gatorade. Gatorade in alcohol just doesn't work. I'm sorry. And it had rum, and it had vodka, and it had a whole bunch of other ingredients in it. And the marketing department was having a hell of a time because whenever they had to make up a batch of Tundra juice, they had to go get all these ingredients, and sometimes they'd forget to put something in or whatever, and it was never the same. It just didn't come out right. But Tundra juice became really famous because it was at all the golf tournaments that we sponsored, and it was at any kind of an event that we had, we always had Tundra juice there. Mm-hmm. So it was decided that we'd have another go at making Tundra juice, and the criteria was that we had to make it with the least number of ingredients, but it still had to be blue
and tasty.
So we set up our tables at the lounge night where we had all these different ingredients and a bunch of bottles of booze and teams of 4 or 5 people, and we would stand around our own tables and try to create something that would be blue and have booze in it. And we got pretty smashed. It was a lot of fun.
Product.
We happened to be on the winning team, and I can give out the recipe to anybody who's listening because it's very simple. It's blue curacao.
Wait a second. Are we allowed to do this? I thought this was a secret.
You can edit it out if you want to.
He's spilling the goods.
Bleep his words there.
It's blue curacao, vodka, and lemonade. Simple.
Boom.
Pretty simple.
And so we won.
Nailed it. And it has been a staple at our Stampede events, at
absolutely
trade shows that we go to. And literally, I know people that's one of their fondest, like, oh, Tundra juice. Yeah, I love that stuff. And they seek it out.
Right.
It's really well known. It's amazing how well known it is,
It is.
And I can remember doing a golf tournament when I was still in the boiler division, and people would come up and we'd all give them all a Tundra juice, and somebody would say to me, "What's in this stuff?" And I'd say, "I guarantee you, there is absolutely no juice in it."
Chris,
people would go to the next hole, and then on their way back, coming across the course, they'd run over and get another glass of Tundra juice while they were on the next fairway.
Right.
Chris, you are an amazing human being. It was such a joy to talk to you today. We miss you immensely. You are missed by everybody at the office. There's a big gap there to fill. I don't know if we'll ever be filled. And we really do appreciate everything you did for us. And we really miss you. Is there anything you'd like to say to the folks at Tundra? Because I'm sure a bunch of them will be watching this. And is there anything you want to say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I thoroughly miss every person. I love you all. You're just a wonderful group of people to be around, and your support of me it was fabulous through the good times and the bad times. It was always wonderful, and I sincerely miss every one of you. I sincerely do, and I just can't wait till lounge nights start up again so I can get over there and see you all again.
Right.
That would be phenomenal to have you. Once we all get this crazy COVID stuff is over, the entire office would go nuts when we have a guest appearance at lounge night, and it's Chris Allan. I can guarantee.
The legendary Chris Allan.
The legend himself.
Well, it's very kind of you to say.
Well, as you sail off into the sunset on your retirement, we wish you nothing but an abundant, full next chapter to your life that's loaded with love, friends, and family.
Thank you.
Love you, Chris.
And I will always be a member of the Tundra family.
Absolutely.
That doesn't change.
Right.
All right. Well, signing off. Thank you all. And thank you everyone who's watched this episode, and stay tuned for the next one.